Hashtag Trending would like to thank Meter for their support in bringing you this podcast. Meter delivers a complete networking stack, wired, wireless, and cellular in one integrated solution that's built for performance and scale. You can find them at meter.com/HTT.
You know what I want? I want a little Delta pin that sits on my shirt that I just go, and then I just talk to it and it answers the questions for me. And I want it to look exactly like the ones from Star Trek Next Generation. That's the AI pin that I want.
Welcome to Hashtag Trending, the weekend edition. This is Project Synapse with Marcel Ganger, John Pinard, and me. And we are talking everything AI. Anyway, we promised that we would start the shows with news from the week and cover the big stories from the week. Remember, we made that promise and we always stay organized. So here's the news from last week. Gemini 3. Now let's move on.
Okay. Actually, how about
did anything else happen last week?
Well, yeah, Claude 4.5 Opus came out, and everybody got all excited about the idea that it is now the champion coding engine in the entire world, even beyond Gemini. And they're showing off coding benchmarks to prove that effect. There is a tiny catch, however. First of all, it's not as full-featured in the sense as Gemini. Like, it doesn't touch everything the way that Gemini does. And it's very expensive. It's really expensive to run Opus 4.5 for any length of time. And a couple of anecdotal comments that I've had from people effectively said, Opus 4.5 is really great, and it was really exciting to use it, and I ran up against the limits like basically in no time and then went back to Gemini Pro. Yeah. So there are some catches there. Sonnet 4.5 is still a great model, but what they've done is, because it is so expensive and because it generates tokens at a rate, it's like $25 per million output tokens or something like that. You could spend like $25 or more per day just doing your casual work. Maybe not a little bit more than casual, but you get the point. And because it is that expensive, it makes you want to look to other things. And what they've done to get around that, to give Anthropic a nod, so to speak, is they've made it so that instead of just canceling the conversation like they would done in the past, where it would be like, I'm sorry, but you've used up all your tokens for the day, come back tomorrow or come back the next day or whatever. What they've done now is it will, first of all, compress the conversation that is currently happening in a way to maintain, at least to a large degree, the context of everything that you were discussing. Okay, so you don't lose the whole conversation. And then it folds all that over to Sonnet 4.5, the cheaper model, so that you can continue operating. To me, that kind of behavior, so to speak, and the fact that we're still talking 200,000 token context window doesn't make me really excited about wanting to go and start doing my work in code instead of.
But this is what I was getting at. We accused you of being the Google fanboy.
He's still the Google fanboy.
Yeah, we discovered last week that this is not a sprint; it's a marathon, and Google's going to win the marathon unless somebody can really win the sprint. I think if OpenAI's big response to this, and I'm waiting for I'll give it to them this week to see what they come up with. Remember, every other time Sam Altman has been able to come up with something and go, oh yeah, you guys just launched this. Hey, look, here's a surprise. Here's a surprise. Johnny Ive and I are going to do something 2 years from now. He brings out this new model of whatever this piece of silly putty is that they're going to release in 2 years. And
kind of a physical device that sits on your desk or whatever and is basically a disembodied, permanently accessible chat GPT.
And then rumors are that NVIDIA is going to come up with a phone, an AI device that can process everything locally.
You know what I want? I want a little Delta pin that sits on my shirt that I just go, and then I just talk to it and it answers the questions for me. And I want it to look exactly like the ones from Star Trek Next Generation. That's the AI pin that I want.
I am so sorry that those guys got out there first with the one that didn't work, because I think they peed in the pool, right?
Yeah.
Because now nobody's going to try it. And that's all I want. I just
you're talking about you're talking about the humane pin that came out a couple of years ago, and would shine like a little laser display on your palm. You could stick it in front and it would write out. You know how they are those laser light shows that you do against buildings, or they used to do against buildings and stuff like that, and you'd see like a scene from a movie or something like that done in fast-moving lasers. Actually, lasers are fast-moving, but it would be like scanning like an old television set. It would be scanning an image or a video on a wall or a mountain or whatever. Anyway, it was the same sort of idea, except that you would hold out your hand in front of this block. It was like a block, 2 or 3 inches by 2 or 3 inches, sitting on your chest, and it would create this display on your hand. A quasi-cool idea, but yeah, and then of course there was the rabbit pin, which was like the next version of it, which turned out to be just, if I remember the story correctly, turned out to basically just be stock Android.
Yeah. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. It was the original Wizard of Oz thing. Oh yeah, there's an Android device in there. Sorry, we forgot. Just by the way, and like I said, I think the Gemini was the big story last week. Even Jensen Huang's rumored AI phone couldn't make a wave last week. And I don't know about you, but just to catch up, Marcel, you've been working on the coding side of this. I've been really stretching Gemini on the text side, on helping me with research, with all those sorts of things. I have to say, it's incredible still. Yeah. Not as good a writer as OpenAI. I did a research report.
Actually is, if you're willing to run the Pro as opposed to the Fast, it's pretty damned impressive. Like
I'm running Pro.
It really is. Are you switching it to Pro to do that? Because it will switch automatically the way that ChatGPT 5.1 does. So you have to have a Plus subscription to be able to do that, and then you make sure that you're always running the Pro version, or the thinking model, I should say.
Yeah, I'm running Pro. I legitimately have compared text for text. Research-wise, I did a thing. This is the dumb stuff that I'll do. I wanted to think about income inequality, and it's a big thing to talk about. So I had Gemini do a research report on income inequality in the Canada and the U.S. Came back to me with a 5-page report, absolutely brilliantly done with tables and all kinds of things. Good. All of the annotations that I asked for, so I could go back and check to make sure that it was checking the right sources. Wrote it really well, but it's no matter what I do to it, its prose style is clunky still. And how do I know that? I asked Gemini. I gave the same task to ChatGPT, and Gemini, it picked the ChatGPT text. So what I was doing last week when I was putting this stuff together and I wanted to make it more readable, I'd do the research in Gemini, and then I'd run the text through ChatGPT. In the same way that we talk about, Marcel, about having fun, this is how you have fun doing a research report. Yeah. Because I want to do a big piece on this, so this is something I'm storing up for the future. But like I said, I found it. And graphic-wise, somebody's trying to do something in OpenAI because it's getting better. It got better last week because I do a lot of graphics. Like I need thumbnails, I need all that sort of stuff. It got better last week and then retreated. Somebody's playing around trying to catch up with Nano Banana. You can see it, and of course, Nano Bananas knocks it out of the park, except it stalled a couple times on me last week where it would keep repeating the same picture and there's nothing you can do about it. It finally, and it apologizes to you. It says, "I'm sorry. I know how frustrating this is for you." No,
but I think part of the thing, Jim, like you talk about writing something in Gemini and then running it through ChatGPT to pretty up the text or whatever. You also used to talk about, and I'm assuming still do, that you used to do the same kind of thing to verify the information that was being provided, to make sure there was no hallucinations and so on. Yep. And so I think it's the same, to me it's the same as far as, I'll call it writing style, is the same as if I wrote something, you wrote something, and Marcel wrote something. It's going to be 3 different styles, and you potentially are going to pick the one that you prefer. Maybe some people prefer the writing style that's in or coming out of Gemini. But I also think it's that whole leapfrog thing that we've talked about before, that Gemini came out with some huge strides forward in the technology and the output of things that they're delivering now. And now they've got some cleanup probably to do. So I think you're going to find that it's going to improve. And it'll be, this week it's ChatGPT's better, next week it's Gemini that's better, it's the week after it's Claude that's better. And it will they'll continue to improve that way, I think. But
then, yeah, I mean, the one thing that we can guarantee is that, yes, things are going to continue to improve. We found that out everybody was going, well, I think development has stalled. We haven't really seen anything really dramatic or whatever. And then Gemini has suddenly pops
It's been
up
3 days.
Whoa!
And we haven't...
Yeah, so actually, apparently things are still moving here. Yes, things are still moving. From the writing perspective, Jim, just to get that one out of the way, I don't know if you, like me, preload your personality, so to speak, and your style into the models, because I do that. It writes the way that I want it to write. So that colors the output to a large degree.
And Gemini, by the way, will study your style.
GPT 5.1, it really
yes.
will. And in fact,
correct.
In fact, what I've done in both of these cases, and Jim, you've been editorializing and writing for a lot of years. You've got a body of work back there that you can look at. I have several books, more than 1,000 articles and magazines and stuff like this. So there's a lot of stuff that I've written over the years, not to mention countless blog posts and crap like this. So what I've done is I created a task in ChatGPT. And by the way, I use ChatGPT 5 Pro for this. And the task is basically an agent research project that I run once a month or so that goes over all the stuff that I've written. It analyzes every word I've ever put down, every story, everything, and then it creates a profile of how I think, what I like, how I like to express things, and so on. So consequently, when I talk to ChatGPT, it sounds an awful lot like I'm talking to myself, or a version of myself, maybe a slightly more smarmy version of myself, but basically something like that.
I've done the whole prompt thing, and let's just so the audience understands, anything you read from me that is marketing, that says, the paragraph about my book, because I'm doing an ad campaign for the book and all that, that's where I really looked at anything you read from me that's a summary on marketing or anything that's written by AI. Why? It's better than I am. And better than anybody. And that's what I'm saying. On those two levels, if you're a marketing person and you're trying to do that, I think you're going to get a better result no matter how well you prompt from ChatGPT right now. That's the one place that I've found that that ChatGPT still has some edge. The rest of it, everything else that I use it for, pretty much Gemini blows it away, including now I'm starting to do some coding as well. And so I'm just saying, they came up with something that is absolutely big. And the integration piece, it's so nice to not have to worry about what you're using. I looked at my YouTube time that I'm spending, and it's out of control. Even YouTube says to me, take a break. And so now, instead of not watching those 15 that I do, I can spin them through and get a summary. And I can figure out which ones I actually want to watch.
Yes.
And that's priceless. Because I don't know how many YouTube videos you've watched, but I'm just so sick of promises that people make in this will revolutionize way you're going to think about AI and blah, blah, blah. And then the guy talks for 15 minutes, does his mid-level commercial. Then you find out that what he's done is he got a clip from a video you saw last week. He took Ilya's video that I just watched, and I was looking for the insight that might add to this.
And he played Ilya's video, occasionally paused and said something at various points in the video, yes.
Okay, but he buried that in. Yeah. You had to listen for 5 minutes to his intro before you could actually get there. So this is, for all of you out there, Gemini is the YouTube blah, blah killer, and I love it.
Okay, so I've been using YouTube the way that I do podcasts. I'm not actually watching for the most part. I just have it in my back pocket and there's a video that's playing. And I have a couple of current obsessions. One of them is Damien, what's his last name? Damo's science fiction channel. He's this British dude that analyzes science fiction films and books and movies and stuff like that. And then that led me over to another dude who calls himself the Feral Historian. And he looks at science fiction through the lens of history and politics and things like this. And he's the American answer to Damo, who apparently they know each other and they're friends from the sounds of it, from the way that they talk about each other occasionally on the videos. And I am just loving this stuff. And it's one of those things that I don't actually have to watch. I can listen to it like a podcast.
Yep.
So I haven't been listening to news podcasts really to much at all in the last week. So I've broken free of it, at least for a little while, until I exhaust everything from Damo and the Feral Historian.
And history. I like to listen to history podcasts and things like that. But there's so many
Fall of Civilizations. Nod to Fall of Civilizations, the best damn history podcast ever created. It's really good, and episodes are like 3-4 hours long.
Yeah, I know that, but that's part of the problem. So you've got to figure out, are these worth my time now? Because you get these things, and I want to know that they're real people with real credentials and real historians, not some guy who wants to take me for 45 minutes before he tells me about how the spacemen landed in Ethiopia and blah, blah, or whatever. I can now analyze this thing and say, is this worth my time? Long story short, while we're doing a catch-up, you've been on the coding end of this, Marcel. I've done a little bit of playing. I'm still impressed with Gemini, but I have not had the time to get the coding. You've been doing some vibe coding, though.
I'm still using Cursor a lot, but of course in Cursor I can specify which model I want to use, whether it is Gemini or ChatGPT or Sonnet. And they have their own streamlined model in there as well, presumably to save money. There are some low-level tasks that you can just turn over to that. And I've got like the monthly $20 a month or $25 a month, whatever it is, a Cursor subscription. I have been, because I've done so much of it in Cursor and because I've gotten so used to working in Cursor, despite the fact that all of these things are based on the VS Code engine, which I think we joked about this last week, thanks to Microsoft for spending money to help continue developing this project and letting us all use it. We appreciate that. But Anti-Gravity, which is Google Gemini's coding engine, is one that I'm slowly moving myself over. And there are things about it that are really impressive and really interesting, but I'm having to wrap my head around the way that it does things. I think last week I mentioned the idea that there's a Chrome plugin so that it will run the app in the browser. It'll run it like a human being. So it'll actually play with the app and go, that doesn't work, and it'll go back and make the coding changes. So it's got this agentic mode that's really quite impressive, that's based on Gemini Pro 3 or Gemini 3 Pro. And like I said, I'm starting to move myself over that way, and both of these things I've got tied into GitHub. So it's continuing. Every time I say, that looks good, let's synchronize with GitHub, and it does all of this stuff automatically. It'll even create the repos automatically. So you don't actually have to understand how the hell GitHub works. I've been using GitHub for more than a decade at this point, but you wouldn't have to understand how it works. You would just need an account, and it would automatically do all of these things for you and save your work and give you and allow you to go back to an earlier version easily. Jim, sorry, you're...
No, but I'm saying you have, but I haven't. And I haven't used GitHub. I stopped doing development 2 decades ago or more. And pretty much people begged me to. No, I'm just kidding. And so GitHub, all of this stuff, I know what it is. Intellectually, I can tell you what it is. I can tell you how it works. But sitting down there for an afternoon going, oh man, do I have to figure this out? The nicest thing about doing the thing with Gemini is saying, here's how you do this. Just you get your API key, you get a couple of things, and move it to this service and it'll run. And by the way, if that's the market that they go after, the people who are doing small applications, ready for made things for small pieces around the workplace and all that, and Claude still owns the coding essence where I'm going to do a major piece of coding, that's not a bad place to be. I'm not sure that Google will seed that forever even, but there's a lot of development that goes on out there that is just, I need this thing that does this simple thing.
Yes.
I need this thing, and I need it to integrate. That's it.
look at traditional coding applications, Jim, that there was a whole slew of different languages and different tools that you can use for coding. And some find the good old Visual Basic is a great thing for doing certain
assembler. You're not a real coder unless you can go to
unless
assembler.
You can code an assembler, exactly. But I think this is no different. That Gemini's coding agent or tool is great for a lot of things, but there may be some limitations, and it may mean that you have to go to Cursor or something else if you want to get a little bit deeper in.
I don't think there are even limitations. I think it's just this one's better. It's if you're a real pro and all that stuff, you really want these things that Claude can do. Pay for Claude.
Yes.
And as Marcel said,
exactly.
Pay for Claude. Pay a lot for Claude.
It also depends on like just what level of a programmer you are. I'm, as I have said for a gazillion years, back in my early days in IT, it's like I will program if I have to. Like if I have to write a script or a program to go through logs and analyze stuff, I will do it if I have to. But that doesn't mean I'm actually a good programmer. And I'm not. I can code in a dozen different languages, but I'm not great at it. And I have never been great at it. And I don't even enjoy the process that much.
That may be part of the reason why you're not good at it. The reason why they put me in charge of testing and then I was project management and management is because I could introduce bugs into code at a rate that was phenomenal. If there was somebody who could make something not work, it was me. Why don't you do testing, Jim? And is it because I'm not smart enough? And I'd say this to people who do code. If you code, you have a disciplined mind, and I respect you tremendously.
Tech support. I was tech support.
I go by that thinking that if there's not a problem out there, I'll make one.
Yeah.
And you guys are the ones who paid for my dinners for a number of years. I got into this business doing tech support, and what's weird, I loved doing tech support. Every problem was a new problem. Everything was just, okay, so what went wrong here? How do I fix this? And once it was fixed, I moved on to the next thing. I think that was one of the things that I didn't enjoy about programming is it was this long-term commitment, day in, day out, working on the same crap. And it was like, I just don't want to do that. Maybe it's my ADHD stuff. It's like there's a squirrel that just walked into the room and what I was looking at before is no longer interesting. I'm going to pay attention to what the hell is going on this side here. And tech support scratched that itch. It was the new thing, the next thing, you know. And another wonderful thing about tech support is, granted, things did not move as quickly as, back then as they do today, but you were guaranteed to always be dealing with the latest and greatest because that's where the problems were. Yeah. And I love that shit. Like, I really do.
Yeah. Like I said,
Oh, sorry. I was just going to talk about, Marcel, where you were talking about having Chrome extensions that you put in for having Gemini test its own code. To me, that's amazing because I started out as a programmer. That's where I started my career. And one of the things that I always found frustrating is you spend all this time to write a program and you can't even test it until you're actually finished. And then you go to test it and you go, oh, crap, that doesn't do what I want it to do, or it doesn't work properly or whatever. And in some cases, you're back to the drawing board again. Whereas with this, if Gemini can test itself, and I've found that even with that little app that I had done up, that calculator that we talked about in last week's show, that as it was writing it, it went through and said, oh, wait a second, I've made some mistakes in the code. Let me go back and correct it. So it does its own QA, which is amazing because that's a huge piece. When you're developing new programs, that's a huge piece to this, is the whole QA time. And if you can get the tool to do probably not all, but a large majority of your QA for you, it becomes game changer.
And I loved QA. And by the way, QA was when I used to run testing departments in the olden days. I loved it because it was always, you're right, Marcel, there were always new stuff coming in. We had to try it out. We had to learn it. We had to find a way to break it. It was, and so we could go back to the program and say, you made a few mistakes there, boys. No, but it was, people have different mindsets. Anyway, back to AI, and we've taken our walk down memory lane. Long and winding road. Never mind. But no,
it's yesterday once more. You should have gone for yesterday once more.
It's yesterday more. You're right. Shooby-doo-ah. Yeah,
sorry.
Okay. But go back to this, and so you've been working through most of the stuff in Gemini. You've tried some other things as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay. So thank you for bringing that back up, because I need to walk back something I said last week. Okay. So last week I suggested that if somebody wanted to actually get started with some of this vibe coding stuff, it might actually be easier to work directly inside ChatGPT or directly inside Gemini or something like this. Remember I said that? You open up you just do some stuff in there, because it will actually run stuff inside your browser, create something and run it inside your browser. And I think that's true still, but because John created that retirement calculator last week, which told me that I'm going to be living in a cardboard box on the side of the street in 10 years.
We'll come visit you, Marcel.
Thank you, John.
And I will read your AI content for food.
Sorry.
It's my retirement plan. I'll be the one.
Anyway, what I decided somewhere along the way after doing a little bit more playing is that I think that AI Studio is actually a really good place to develop or play with an application. And the killer feature for me on that one is it will run it, and of course it will run it on, it won't try to run it locally, just in your browser or something like that. It actually will run it using Google's engines on the back end. And the reason that's cool is then you can share the app the way that John did. Okay, you can share the app with the rest of the world. Now, late last night, I shared an app with you guys that I started developing yesterday, just because it hit me and I thought, this would be a fun thing to do. And I was able to spin up this app in a few minutes, and then I was able to test it out. I tested it out with ChatGPT, with Gemini, with actually, Qwen 3.2 or whatever the heck it is. I should take a look. I've got it over here running locally on my Linux PC that I've got sitting over there. And it was just really a cool idea that I thought, I'm glad I did it here, because after I tweak it just a little tiny bit more, because I'm trying to sex it up, I'm just going to let everybody play with it, because I think it's such a cool idea. And so that flexibility
back up for the audience out there.
Oh,
so
sorry.
You're saying you're using AI Studio. That's build when you're in Gemini.
That's right. Build an AI Studio, which I did a little demo of last week, if you recall. I shared my screen and I did a little demo of it. And that's where I built it. But when you create an app there, you have the opportunity to then publish the app inside AI Studio, make it public, publish it, and then everybody in the world has access to it. If you think it's interesting, if you think other people will enjoy playing with it, you get to do that. And that allows you to reach an audience, right? I'm not saying you're making money here, okay? But it allows you to share your idea and your tool, your game, whatever, with people basically by clicking and sharing a link.
And I did not follow them, but they had a much simpler path to hosting than using the old Firebase, the thing that they were using with Firebase. This had 2 instructions, type here, and they gave you a couple of places that would host for you. And by the way, Google was the last on the list. But it was a really simple thing. So you could get a test application out there, share it. And I read all these productivity things, and it's only 10% more productive to do this. I don't think they're taking the analyst time into account. And I don't think they're taking the time that they spend reworking things because the end user didn't want that. Because I think this ability to prototype an application at this level, if that doesn't make you more productive by a factor of 5, shame on you.
Okay, so I think that exists with other technologies as well, not just one. There is, much as I hate to admit it, and I think we were going to talk about this before we started, but much as I hate to admit it, there is a growing, I don't know if distrust, but hatred as well, or distrust, hatred, whatever, suspicion about all of these tools, whether it's AI in the form of large language models, whether it's generative AI that allows you to create videos and deepfakes and stuff like that, humanoid robots, which people look at and say, there's the Terminator right there. That's the early model before we get to the T-2000. And it's all of these things they see as the slide into something really dangerous and scary. And there are all these stories about how it's going to destroy us. And I think that sentiment is growing. I don't believe that it is the sentiment that is going to, if you'll pardon the expression, win in the long run. But there's no denying that it's growing. And people worry about technologies in the same way, like you talked about coding there, Jim. Just to wrap up that thought. You talked about coding, and people say, I don't know what's going under the surface, but that's because they don't trust what's going under the surface, and they're worried that it's going to introduce such problems at a high level, like a high corporate level, that it worries them in the same way that people worry about the ideas. We've got self-driving cars on the road. Yeah, but the self-driving cars are actually better than the humans. Despite the fact that, yes, it's true, every once in a while, a self-driving car screws up and hits something. But humans hit things like many times a day, and we never think about it. But we distrust the thing that makes a mistake once every 1,000 times.
Yeah, and we don't realize that a plane is being flown by the onboard computer.
And has been for years.
Yeah, and we're all comfortable with that. We'll get to that point. But I think there's two levels at this, and one is, and I think maybe we'll tail off with that discussion, because I do want to catch something John wanted to bring up. We've gone from the marketing, the text, the video of Gemini, and what's happening. We've talked about coding. I want to talk about agents, because that's a big piece. But the idea that AI may very well kill us all. I'll have a great discussion with that. The book, if anyone builds it, everyone dies, is realistic for discussion. But it's not here yet. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about tools that are run by a new way of making code, a new way of automating, but are going to take over anyway. From the days when people wouldn't believe in the horseless carriage to the days when they wouldn't believe in electricity, people today don't believe in things that are going to happen. We've never seen a technology at this level that didn't take over. And it's just, so you can fight that battle if you like. You can write emails to me and whatever, but I'm having trouble believing that this isn't going somewhere. But the question is going to be accuracy and security. And and there's two levels to that. There's a basic level for the next 18 months. Now there's a 2-year level, which is slightly different. But right now, one of the things you'll notice with Gemini that's going to get us all into trouble is you can write agents in it really easily. And those agents have access to all your stuff and all of that. By the way, just if anybody's saying, that's a bad thing, that's never going to happen. Guess what? Almost every browser application that you install is asking for permission to add, delete, and write to your instance, whether it's Microsoft or whether it's Gemini. That cat's out of the bag, but it's a big problem from security aspect right now.
Yes.
You're not going to get a better intro than that, John.
I'll take it right now. But one of the things that I want to throw out there for just a second before I get into my story is we've talked about AI. It's going to kill marketing jobs and things like that. There's a new industry that is actually being threatened by AI. And you'll never believe what it is. It's Formula One race car drivers. There's a racing league, and I can't remember exactly where it is, but it's in the Middle East, that is autonomous driving Formula One cars, where there are no drivers. And they have this whole race league and they look exactly like Formula One cars. The only difference is there's no cockpit. So it's the last place that I would have thought. My son and I are really into Formula One racing, but it's the last place that I would have thought that you would replace somebody.
Okay, I'm going to push back on this, okay? I think that the reason that this is happening is it's cool. It's a thing to watch, okay?
Yep.
I don't for a moment think, unless we ban humans in high-speed vehicles in a racing scenario.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the tech guy this is the techno-optimist, this is leaning into transhumanist kind of guy talking, okay? That's just not happening. People are going to continue sitting in fast vehicles and racing them. And people are going to keep going into rings and beating the shit out of each other sometimes with gloves on their hands, sometimes with bare fists or something like that. That is going to keep happening, despite the fact that one of the interesting things that's happening as well is there are underground humanoid robot fighting leagues cropping up. Where people
Marcel, you've got to stop hanging out in those bars, okay? Not everybody gets into a fist fight on Saturday night. And Marcel sits there and goes, I think that AI is great for writing. And all these novelists punch him.
Anyways, I know.
Thank God they're only writers because they don't hit as hard. But
the first rule of Fight Club.
I know I took us completely off track.
But this is an important thing, and this is what they keep their eye on the extreme. And don't kid yourself, the extreme, the things that we thought were extreme that are now mainstream are incredible. But what's more likely to happen out of that experiment is you're going to find people with technology that allows them to take the human-driven cars to a level they've never been taken.
And in actual fact, I think the same way that Pirelli provides all the tires for Formula One race cars, and the reason they do that is to help to improve the tires that go on your car or my car. My understanding is at least a subset of the output from this autonomous racing league is that it is to help to improve autonomous driving vehicles that you or I would drive.
Yeah, and you don't want
take
Grok
that technology and improve it.
You don't want Grok to be your autonomous vehicle because he'll give everybody the finger and yell racist slogans at them, just like people do on the 401.
Yes. Okay, so anyway, I digressed, but I would like to, if I may, I'd like to jump into this other story.
Sure.
So we've talked, I talk often about cybersecurity and how it relates to artificial intelligence and so on. And you would have heard me talk before that at the company that I work at, we use Copilot because of the fact that we have the ability to put guardrails. I talk about it fencing in my backyard to keep my data safe. And so I had a friend of mine reached out to me yesterday, in fact, that said that they have a very similar setup with us. They also use Copilot and so on. And they had somebody from their office reach out to them because they use a tool for a corporate intranet that is now building an AI assistant within their tool using Claude. And so they're asking, is there any risk and so forth? And I'm sitting there going, okay, like us, we have guardrailed our data by using private tenant Copilot, so that we can manage our data and secure it and make sure that people can't get at things that they shouldn't. But now you're taking information that's on the corporate intranet and you're pushing it out through Claude, which A, is hosted in the US, so you lose your data sovereignty because we're in Canada. You don't know what security has been put in place by the organization that is using Claude. And it's just, it opens up a whole different can of worms that I would really, this friend of mine is asking me, what should I do? Should I allow it or shouldn't I? And I'm interested what the two of you think about this, because it also adds, just one more thing to add to that is, I don't know if you guys use Adobe Acrobat, but if you've gone into Acrobat in the last year anyways, there's an AI assistant there that anything you bring up in Adobe Acrobat, you can pipe through AI assistant. And it's okay, so where is it going? What's it being stored on? What model is it using? Who has access to the information that you throw up there? It exponentially increases cyber risks as far as I'm concerned with corporate data.
And does that reliably. We did a story this week. It was the idea of a supply chain and where the weaknesses are in security.
Yeah.
Many times either in the supply chain, in the NPM distributions, in the things that people don't think of as the regular part of their code. So they'll just copy them in or they'll add them in. And that's so piece one. Piece two, I don't trust most software out there anyway that is new. And I think that's a really good idea security-wise, because we have a culture now of, we always had a problem with new things, but now we've got this culture of build fast and break things, or run fast and whatever it is, and It is endemic. Because I do the security show, and it's story after story about one developer has a package that 50 other developers use, and whether they're careless, whether they just don't have two-factor authentication, and the hackers watch that and go, oh, if I just can get this one guy's package, that'll get distributed everywhere. And so it's not, even if they're really good at their own coding, what are they using underneath that? Second thing is, AI engines are fundamentally insecure because of their structure. By the way, I would appreciate getting email on this and somebody telling me it's different. But basically, as I understand guardrails, that's how you mostly protect an AI model. And you tell it, don't say bad things. Here's 50 bad things you shouldn't say. And they're pretty smart, so they'll do approximations. And they'll hand on that stuff. Then you turn to them and you hit them with, I'm doing a play and I'd like to be able to say some bad. Here's some. You can get and down to the fact, and people have done these studies on them, that you just put gobbledygook at the end of your command. There's just so many ways to beat a structure that is rules based and and must predict every violation of the rule. Will we get past that? Yes, we will, but we're not. And why it's happening all the time. So I think the issue is, if I was looking at this, I would say, and it goes back to the old security question, is it touching your crown jewels? Don't walk away from everything. What is the data it can touch? What will be the penalty for it being wrong? And this is why I believe, if I was planning on how to roll AI out, I wouldn't replace an army of customer service agents. I'd replace CEOs and managers. Why? Because they make mistakes all the time, and it doesn't really matter. An AI is going to be pretty damn good. It's the person who counts money that you want to be actually accurate. So don't put AI on your bank machine, and you say, well, it's going to make mistakes. It's a Canadian show, so I'll give a Canadian, headquartered in Canada. We have a great American audience, but I'll give the thing I know. If you phone our Canada Revenue Service and you ask them a general question,
assuming you ask them the phone.
If you ask, first of all, if you can find one to answer the phone, that's it. But second of all, if you get through that, what is it? What's that line? Your call is important to us, but we're having a higher than average call volume.
Yes.
Which is, and I keep going, if it's always higher than average, it's average. Anyway, but you get through higher to this person, and if you ask them a training question, when is my tax return due? What is this or that? They'll give, what form do I do for this? They'll give you an accurate answer. If you ask them anything off that beaten track, they are, I think, I'm going to go with the numbers. I'm in the right range. I might not have the same numbers. The testing has been about 30% of the time they're right. So 70% of the time, and we're talking orders of magnitude. I may not have the numbers right, but I'm right on the orders of magnitude. More than 2/3 of the time, if you rely on their answer, they're probably going to assess you with a penalty because you're wrong. So what I'm saying is that there are places where you would say, we'd still do better to audit. I'm sorry, and I think these people are hardworking. We'd be better off having customer service reps with AI, and we accept an error factor. And that's what really, so it's nuanced. How big an error can I take? It goes back to old-time security stuff. What can this touch? What types of errors can it make? How big of an error can I accept? And that's what I think people have to do. And a long-winded way of getting there.
Yeah,
but they're not doing that.
Yeah, first of all, yes, I think we have to accept a certain level of error. And we had friends over last week, and one of them still has an old flip phone. Like an old flip phone with just the numerical keyboard, whereas if you want to, I'm not actually kidding. And she still uses this thing. And the amazing thing about this particular device versus a 10-year-old device, okay, is that it's ridiculously secure because it can't actually talk to any modern system in any way. All it can do is place calls. It can take 320 by 240 images on its little built-in camera. Like, we're talking like really low resolution for anybody who might not know what the hell I'm talking about here. But it is secured not by design, but by obsolescence, okay? It's not in use by anything other than as a means of placing a call. And then there's that story. Let me give I haven't done this in the last 5 minutes, so let me give a 1980s movie reference, War Games. And if you remember at the beginning of War Games, they take out all of the guys that are in the silos, the missile silos, and they replace it with computers, which is then, of course, the Whopper computer, which then starts to prepare for global thermonuclear war. By bringing the automated systems in place, luckily the system was intelligent enough to realize that the only way to win is not to play. And in a way, that's like a validation of the artificial intelligence because it figured it out. It ran so many simulations that it said, this is just stupid, and the best way is just not to do anything. And I think that was a brilliant, prescient thought towards modern systems that can look at these things.
Yeah.
The question of the glorified stochastic parrot and the autocorrect and so forth. Modern systems are not just a set of rules that are in place. There is, and I will argue this till the end of time, there is an intelligence back there. You can have it scan through a document and it will understand the reasons why a character did a particular things or why this solution was arrived at and so forth. That's not next word prediction. That's understanding of what's actually happening in the system. So we are past that stage, but anything that is recent, you talked about new things are always, and I'm not sure, I'm going to put words into your mouth here, but new things are a little bit scary because they're open to things breaking and so on. The fact is, anything that has existed since the modern internet has been in place, so for the last 20 years or so, if you don't upgrade, if you're not monitoring this stuff, if you're not dealing with the latest version, you are creating a security nightmare for yourself. One of the main reasons, aside, of course, from keeping the business going at Apple and the hardware manufacturers in China, is that the technology becomes insecure because it's not supported past a certain number of years. So the only way to be safe, whether you like it or not, whether you believe that you're introducing new bugs and new security holes and so forth, you are playing with fire if you're not keeping up to date. You have to update your code. You have to update your hardware. You have to update your operating system because the famous dependency XKCD cartoon, right? You know that one? Everybody knows this one?
No.
Okay, let me share the screen just for a brief moment, and I will describe what it says, but in case you have not seen this one, XKCD cartoon called Dependency, okay? You see it on your screen there? It's this collection of blocks. You've seen this one. You've got this collection of blocks. All modern digital infrastructure, and then there's a little pin at the bottom holding everything up. A project some random person in Nebraska has been thanklessly maintaining since 2003. Thank God that nameless person has been maintaining the project since 2003 because lots of things depend on that stuff. And you better be keeping stuff up to date. Whether you think that, oh, it's the new thing and it's dangerous by virtue of being new, the worst thing, other than disconnecting from the internet completely, making sure that there are only floppy disks in the missile tubes, okay? The only way is to stay up to date. That's my rant. You got to move with the times, people.
But tied with that, though...
Says the guy who refers to 1980 movies more than anybody else in the entire world. You got to move with the times. You got to keep up. Yeah, okay. Retro Marcel.
But
John.
let me ask, Marcel, you say you got to keep up with the times. So back to this scenario that I'm talking about, does that mean that you throw security out the window so that you can stay up to date with the most current data models and so forth? Or
in fact, that's what I'm arguing. I'm arguing that unless you have hooked up with a vendor who has put out a product, and I'm done here, baby.
Yeah.
Unless that's what you're doing, you are signing up for a constant improvement cycle. Constant updates, constant monitoring of the software to make sure that the latest vulnerability has been patched, has been taken care of. Yes, crap can fall from the sky and you're buried in the stuff and you have to fix something dramatic. But if you're not constantly in this upgrade cycle, and I know it's scary and I know it's expensive, but you have to do it. Like it's part of what you have to do. Now, you mentioned another thing which doesn't have anything to do with security in that respect, which is, where the heck is my data?
Yep.
Okay. And again, we had friends over and we were talking about the idea that so much of the enterprise runs on things like AWS or Google Cloud or whatever. In their case, it was AWS. All right. And the servers are somewhere in the States. And at the moment, we're looking at the United States going, I don't know, this place is a little bit sketchy. But that doesn't change the fact that's where the massive amounts of that infrastructure exists. Yes, we have data centers here in Canada, but the engines that run things like financial systems, that run most of the email servers in the entire world, are sitting in these big US data centers, at least for us in the Western world. China, obviously, Russia, different scenario there. But unless you want to start running your own email server and your own database back inside your building again, okay, that's a risk you're going to have to accept. And B, it's something that you're going to have to work to mitigate with your vendors, with your suppliers, because you don't have a choice. Short of saying, I'm bringing everything back in-house, and that ain't easy, and that's going to be costly, all right? You don't have that choice.
And quite frankly, my take these days is that if you can't host it in Canada, host it in the UK. Because they've got much better restrictions and limitations and security in place than the US or a number of these other countries do.
But it ultimately doesn't matter. We're sitting saying, we're in Canada, we live in Canada, maybe we don't want to have our data hosted in the US. You're in the US and you say, I don't really want to have my data hosted in the UK. And everybody agrees we don't want it in China. That whole data sovereignty argument is a valid argument and something that people can think about. But damn it, while we're arguing about whether we should use AWS or Microsoft, have those arguments. They're perfectly there.
Yep.
My God, protect your S3 buckets.
Yeah.
No, but
people still use S3 buckets?
No, but there's more data lost because people don't have proper passwords, have not encrypted their data. And they're worried about these great philosophical things. And I don't mean to diminish that. Please, you can think about that. But pay attention to the basics and don't say no as the first line out of your mouth. We did this whole thing on cybersecurity today, and we were talking about how intelligence officers win you over and how somebody can get somebody in, and we wanted to do this for social engineering. So we brought in an intelligence officer to tell us about how they would take somebody and make them a source. First thing they do is they win them over by getting some level of agreement or some level of thing that they can discuss, and they don't say, hi, I'm an agent for another government, I'd like to recruit you. They get to know you. But we don't do that. We don't do that in security discussions. The first question is, I'm the security guy. No. And guess what they do? They go around you.
Yep.
They go to the CEO and they say, that security guy is a good guy, and I'm really happy to have him. And the line that was used on me one time, I loved it, was, Jim, you're very honest in your opinions. Sometimes you're too honest. And that was to prepare me to not be saying things in front of the president that were embarrassing. And while we all talked about transparency. And it's the same thing in security. You have to be able to have that discussion, but you can't have it if your first word is no. So that's why I'm saying you've got to look at this stuff and say, can I find the areas where I'm going to do the least damage? We're never going to be perfect.
Yep.
If you want perfect software, get that flip phone. It's almost perfect.
Yes, and you're right. So we should turn this into an improv troupe. Just do the yes and, because Jim said we can't use no as the first word. So we just do yes and continue from there.
Yeah. But it's a great piece, and it's something everybody has to think about. What's the software I have and what's behind it? There are 100 Oracle installations in large companies. Many of them have been breached. And probably not through a great fault of Oracle, somebody has found something, a supply chain provider or service. Yep. And in this particular case, I think it was a CRM company that put out some data that made it easy to hack these. And then those major companies are hacked. So it's an ecosystem. It has checks and balances, and you have to understand them. And by the way, I don't think a lot of companies have the people to do this. No. This is new skills.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely new skills. It's a whole new way of thinking, because you're now, not only you talked about your own code, this now goes beyond that to third-party applications that tie into it, kind of like Google extensions kind of thing. And it's not even just those third-party applications. But now you have to look at what if it's AI, what models are they using for those third-party applications? So it just becomes a big, huge rabbit hole that you're digging down into, that you actually have to. We do, like at our company, when we have third-party vendors, we have an information security questionnaire that they have to fill out that goes through a whole bunch of cybersecurity related questions for our potential vendor. But you almost have to take it another level that says, okay, so we're doing this to you, but what vendors do you use, and how do you manage those vendors? And
if I was going to reinvent myself as a consultant, and thank God I am now officially retired from that. I have, like Marcel, I have one or two clients that I'll advise and probably never bill as much as I should, and blah blah blah. But if I was going to reinvent myself as a consultant again, going out, I would be looking at finding ways to understand security and accuracy in AI systems and present myself to companies saying, I'll help you do that inspection.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a huge skill. And by the way, I'd use AI tools extensively to do that. Yeah. I think if anybody isn't playing with those to try and figure out, to help them with security, they've made a major mistake in my mind. Like I said, Gemini right now, the analysis capability, I think we should all be, I'm not saying it will work, I'm saying we should all be stretching that tool right now to say, what can it do for me in terms of helping me with security?
Yep.
Because it's certainly going to hurt you. I signed up, and I was just looking at this the other day, and like I said, I was putting I wanted this system, and it was going to help me with my Google stuff. It's a little CRM thing for the publishing company, because I'm tired of doing this in a spreadsheet. We've gotten big enough that we have to actually do that. Looking at a CRM that integrates with my Gmail, because we use Gmail. And I'm sitting there clicking the buttons to say what data I'm going to let this thing have access to.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I went, oh my God.
Yeah. But that's one of the things
anytime.
that's one of the things that worries me the most about AI is that we've always talked about move fast and break things. And the 12 days of shipments, and Gemini came out with all of these new tools, and everybody's coming out with new versions. But how much work is being done on their end to actually test it and ensure that it's secure? And Jim, I remember, this goes back probably almost a year ago, that you had talked about, or you had did an interview with somebody, and I think it was to do with OpenAI, but I could be mistaken, talking about how easy it was to break into it. And it's just,
and that wasn't jailbreaking. That was breaking past the technical infrastructure and getting in. And it's easy peasy. And by the way, this is now that Gemini has taken this lead, everybody's got to get faster. Yeah. And if you really think that Sam Altman wandered into his development shop and said, guys, pay more attention to cybersecurity than ever before. If you really think that was the speech he made, God bless you. And the same thing at Anthropic even.
Yep.
And I'm sure that Omodai was sitting there going, look, we got to be safe because that's our brand. But I've heard those speeches from CEOs too. We got to be safe because it's our brand, but you can be too safe.
Yeah.
Ilya Sutskever gave a talk that's been played back a few times and analyzed a few times. And as he's one of the original founders of OpenAI, he's the guy that would wander around the office going, "Feel the AGI." And he created something called the Safe Superintelligence Lab. I believe that's the name. Somebody's going to beat me up for that, but Safe Superintelligence. The idea being that we were going to build this safe superintelligence that was safe for humanity and so on. And in the interview, he talked about the idea that real superintelligence is probably now 20 years out, as opposed to a couple of years out. AGI and superintelligence, obviously SGI and AGI, are different things entirely, but his lab is concentrating on what happens once we reach AGI, the superintelligence part of it, which is the if somebody builds it, we all die scenario.
But Ilya also gives you that AGI is here now.
Yes, and I tend to agree with that. And I also tend to agree that there is a level of consciousness that exists in these things. I wanted to talk about consciousness. We don't have time for that today, I'm sure. But I do think that we are so past the point that we need to start thinking of these things as another form of intelligence that's out there that we work with. It's our coworker. It's the person who works in the other office in the corner that we have no idea what the hell he does. But we know that a good chunk of the company revolves around this person, and we want to appease them or be nice to them because otherwise everything else falls apart. The testing, John, there's so much of this world, of society, of humanity, over the course of humanity has been built on something called trust. Okay? If we assume that every other person that we walk by on the street was going to kill us, we would never have built the society that we've got today. We never would have the world that we've got today. We have to assume that most people out there believe in a system where we work together, where we help each other out, where we're not basically trying to burn down every house as it's being built. And I think that's a really good thing. And we have to believe that in technological systems as well. Okay? When someone does an update to something, we have to, on some level, believe that if they don't necessarily have our best interests at heart, okay, they're not trying to kill us, all right, which is a slightly different thing. You like to use the build fast and move fast and break things, which was the original Facebook motto, which, by the way, they took down, as I understand it, from the building. It's not there anymore. That was from the early days of Facebook, because nobody likes the idea that you're working to break things. Yeah. But that was the thing at the time. However, things are moving fast, and like I said, we have to trust that these people are doing that. Otherwise, we're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to do any security updates in your company. You're not going to roll out new systems for your customers who are asking for those things, or who are asking for those things, if only because the other company, your competitor, is providing those things and they want to see it from you as well. Or otherwise, they're going to move to that competitor. I guess what I'm saying is, if not inherent goodness in all of these people, if we want to think that the whole point of this is raw capitalism and making money and nothing else, we have to assume that someone somewhere has decided that the best way to make money is not to kill your customers.
Theoretically, that's, yeah.
So trust has to be at the core of using these technologies, whether it's something as simple as I have turned over I used to run an email server. I used to actually have a separate server that did everything, and all of my stuff went through there.
I actually ran an email server.
In my day, we used an actual server in the basement hooked up to a dial-up modem.
In cybersecurity, you know what you call that now?
What?
A horror of risk.
Yeah.
Nobody. But
so
seriously,
now I
the
trust
people running
Google.
their own AI, their own email servers. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's, so let me, and I'll put my company in the shoes of my friend for a second, that if we're a financial institution, we look after our members' money. And if I put a system in place that turns out to not be secure, and even one of my members' data ends up where it shouldn't, the amount of reputational risk for our organization is enormous. It doesn't take we don't have to have any members lose money. All we have to have is one member's data show up somewhere where it shouldn't, and we'll lose members.
And that's why John has a ticket on standby that will take him to a compound in South America.
And I think that's your going in position. But realistically, get an abacus then.
Yeah,
because, I know. And even then, I'm not sure. You'd have to hire somebody who's really good with it. Because I've been in financial service. I spent like half of my career in financial services. And the number of mistakes that were made, that would drive you crazy. People count on these things. They'll take actions. There's just the ripple effect of decisions is so incredible. And not just one member's data. So if that's what that old proverb, the Buddhist proverb, you can't try to not fail. If you try not to fail, you'll fail. And
don't think of a pink elephant.
Yeah, another great Buddhist proverb. Thank you. But I'm just saying, you have to take risk. You will make mistakes. You can never say that openly in a business meeting, because we all have to do the BS thing of there'll be no mistakes. And I lived there for ages, and I don't have to agree with that anymore. The fact is, business is risk. It's always risk. The question is, what are you risking? And I still go back to this. We stop talking about AI and get to know what's really important. So the first words out of your mouth aren't, we can't do that, because they're going to go around you. We have to wrap up soon, but I didn't get to our myth show. But I really want to make a conscious effort to do our myths and myth understanding. I feel like
our myth
and myth understandings program, because I think there are a lot of them, and we've just outlined one of them today, and that is, we'll leave this with you. The fact is, Ilya Sutskever admitted it. We're at AGI. How advanced that AGI is, you can argue that. But you can't argue any longer that this is a stochastic parrot. It is a thinking entity, however you want to describe it, and it has a level of understanding. And Marcel, you may be right, potentially something resembling what we could talk about as consciousness. We're further ahead than we ever thought possible.
Yeah.
And I don't want to minimize. Google upped the stakes last week. Nobody stays in this game if they don't run this faster. So we're going to see some incredible pressure for advances. And anything they got in the closet right now that's going to make a wow factor, they're going to bring it out, because they have to. And they being mostly OpenAI, because OpenAI has a problem right now. They exist because of reputation. They don't have enough customers to pay. They need hundreds of billions of dollars worth of investment, and they have to keep raising that. And so if you're not going to have revenue, you better have a dream.
Well, and if you have as much money as there are in reserves there, what are you going to do with it? You got to do something with it, and you might as well chase artificial superintelligence. So I know we're wrapping up, but I'm going to point to Dr. Alan Thompson's conservative countdown to AGI, which we mentioned on the show in the past.
Yep.
And it's been sitting at 95% for a few months now. Okay, like we're 95% of the way there to what the criteria that he has put together toward what we'd call official artificial general intelligence. And with the release of Gemini 3.0, it actually ticked up for the first time in months, and it is now at 96%. So that's the conservative countdown as opposed to the one where you and I are saying and Ilya are saying we're already at AGI. The conservative countdown is now at 96%. So I don't know. I think we can probably safely call it at this point.
I feel this is like that of the election show. I think,
let's call it.
Where there's the last 4%. Okay, the election desk has called it. AGI is going to win. And that's it. Yeah. Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper,
gentlemen.
Peace and long life. Week. Later.
Yep. Take care.
And that's our show. I'm your host, Jim Love. Once again, in the spirit of Thanksgiving, we would like to thank Meter for their support in bringing you this podcast. Meter delivers full-stack networking infrastructure, wired, wireless, and cellular to leading enterprises, and working with their partners, Meter designs, deploys, and manages everything required to get performant, reliable, and secure connectivity in a space. They design the hardware, the firmware, build the software, manage deployments, and run support. It's a single integrated solution that scales from branch offices, warehouses, and large campuses all the way to data centers. Book a demo at meter.com/HTT. That's meter.com/HTT. In our tradition, we celebrate both American and Canadian holidays. To our U.S. listeners, have a great Thanksgiving holiday.